Very good day to everyone. I hope you're all well. I'm Kylie from UN Global Compact Network Malaysia and Brunei, and I will be facilitating for this session. First and foremost, thank you all for joining us in today's workshop titled SMEs and Climate Action, the Path Towards Sustainable Transformation. Before we start, I would first like to highlight on a few things to all our participants here. Firstly, kindly keep your mic and camera turned off throughout the session. And for the best experience, please view this in the speaker's view. How you're able to do that is just click on the top right corner of your screen and click on the view button. Please do note that this session is recorded. And if you're having any connectivity issues, please feel free to restart by leaving the call and jumping back in again. We welcome all participants to be interactive during this session. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat box below. I hope this is clear for everyone. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me via the chat box below. To start, I would first like to thank our knowledge partner, ACCA Malaysia, for hosting this session with us. I would also like to pass the floor to Aaron to give a brief introduction on ACCA and to introduce our trainers for today. Over to you, Aaron.
Thank you very much, Kylie, for that kind introduction. And hello, everyone, and good afternoon. I hope you're having a great time. Well, I know it's raining outside if you're in Kuala Lumpur like I am, but hey, I hope you are dry and comfortable indoors. So let's kick off our workshop. Firstly, a very warm welcome to SMEs and Climate Action, the path towards sustainable transformation. I know that's why you're here. You want to know, how do you take this path to become more sustainable in your recovery or in just building a more sustainable world? I am Aaron Saw from ACCA. I will be facilitating today's session and have been given the honor to introduce our lineup of presenters. This workshop is proudly brought to you by ACCA to support the amazing initiative by the UN Global Compact Network for Malaysia and Brunei, so as to exchange best practices and showcasing initiative or innovative approaches that SMEs like you can transition to sustainable practices. Well, if you are not familiar with ACCA, you're probably wondering, who are these people? Who are we? So I'm going to give you a quick introduction about the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, or colloquially, everyone calls us ACCA. We are a global professional body for professional accountants. It's a thriving global community with over 200,000 members. We have more than 500,000 future members based in 178 countries and regions. Now, I know you've got all the stats on the slides. You can look at it. With more than 7,600 approved employers globally employing our members and future members, it's very likely that you have worked with an ACCA member or a future member. Now, that's why we are working with UNGC to bring this workshop to you. Being a force for public good is really nothing new for ACCA, as that has been embedded in ACCA's purpose since 1904. Now, that's more than 100 years of heritage. In December 2020 last year, ACCA made commitments to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, which we are measuring and will be reporting in our annual integrated report. So do check it out on our website. Through our cutting edge research, that's the professional insights, we want to help you, yes, you SMEs, not only accountants, but also SMEs, navigate this emerging and evolving sustainability landscape. And we want to provide you with the practical insights, with tools, learnings, and importantly, connections, so you have the skills and confidence to lead changes required to drive positive and sustainable business performance. So stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, as we do our best to inspire you to take positive climate action. So next, let me introduce our esteemed lineup of speakers. Kicking off the session after this will be Alexandra. She is the head of SME Professional Insights at ACCA. Alexandra has led several research in the SME sector, and she will be sharing insights around business case for sustainability in SMEs. I'm sure you want to know about it, as well as introducing, now this is important, practical guidance for SMEs to take the action. Then I will take over the virtual stage to discuss how you can leverage on accountants or small and medium accountancy practices, that's the SMPs, who most likely are already servicing you. They can help you navigate and implement sustainable practices, as well as help you tell your stories meaningfully to stakeholders. I will do that in the segment, The Role of Accountants as Sustainability Trailblazers. Following that is, we have Andrew Chong. Andrew is an AI scientist at EY's EMEIA AI Center of Excellence. He also co-founded UPledge, a crowdfunding solution that helps investors improve their financial wellness while connecting them to verified sustainable startups in support of the UN SDGs. Did I mention that Andrew is an ACCA member too? So yep, here we have an accountant who have turned to become an AI scientist. So Andrew will be speaking about the role of technology in implementing sustainable practices and sustainability reporting in startups and SMEs, right? Hopefully that helps you build more confidence and make the topic of sustainability reporting less scary. By then, I'm sure you are curious if any of your peers in SMEs have embarked on this journey to be more sustainable, and you would like to hear their stories. I'm delighted to introduce Juliana Adam, or you may know her as Juliana. She's the CEO of BGBG Initiative. It's an impact-driven enterprise that champions sustainable living and practices. In that section, or in that segment, we will ask Juliana how BGBG Initiative and SME is championing sustainability. So I'll wrap up the introduction. Now let me hand over the virtual stage to my colleague, Alexandra, who will bring you through this segment of sustainability in SME, the business case. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Good afternoon, everyone. And well, thank you so much, first of all, to UN Global Compact for the opportunity to share our views with the audience today. So as Aaron said, well, I'm looking after SME research within our professional insights team. And within last year, sustainability has been one of the main focus areas for us. We were talking to many small businesses from around the world with finance professionals who are trusted advisors to small and medium-sized businesses, trying to understand where they are with their sustainability journey, what knowledge they have about that, and what's their understanding about the imperatives to act and to what they could do. So this introductory part will be about the business of sustainability. It's just to set up the scene for this session. It's also actually to hear from you. Don't hesitate to introduce yourselves in the chat if you'd like to share who you are, because it's always easier for us to talk to you when we understand our audiences. So first of all, I think it's undeniable that SMEs have an impact, a very serious impact on the economies in every country. If we look at global statistics, 90% of organizations in the world are small and medium-sized enterprise. So the sustainability, the carbon impact of those companies is really huge, and it's absolutely important to have small businesses on board if we look at climate action. But we do also understand that many small businesses are preoccupied with survival at the moment, and survival and growth challenges such as navigating globalization, transforming to digital, and of course the changing nature of work. We all know that, well, small businesses have been most heavily hit by the pandemic, and currently many of small businesses are still in the challenging phase, others already looking at the recovery. So we do realize that the recovery needs to go hand in hand with sustainability. However, when also talking to our to SMEs, when we were running the global survey, it was really striking to see how few of the SMEs are actually, for example, looking at setting net zero targets. So according to the data, to our survey data, the global survey that we ran back in summer 2021, we found out that only 8% of SMEs had set net zero targets for 2050, which is a really very low level. And our purpose of our research that resulted into a playbook that we co-authored with our strategic partner, Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand, was to bring as much practical information as possible to raise the awareness of the SMEs to act in sustainability field and to support them with the practical tools that they could be using in their sustainability journey. So I'll let you know where you can find that playbook a little bit later, but turning to the topic of this short part of the session. So sustainability, the business case, why act now? Well, there are so many imperatives for small businesses to start acting now. Supply chain. We all know that large organizations are now facing mandatory requirements to report on sustainability. And because of SMEs form a significant part of larger businesses' supply chains, this is a key driver for them to become more sustainable, for you to become more sustainable. And demonstrating your commitment to sustainable business raises your profile and enhances your social license to operate within the supply chains of large organizations. So that's the matter of future-proofing your business within the supply chains. Cost savings. So I know that in many SMEs, sustainability is seen as a cost, but actually it can be seen as a cost saving as well. And embracing change creates significant opportunities to reduce your costs. Water and energy efficiency initiatives, recycling, reusing, and we'll hear a beautiful story of BJ a bit later on today on how they are leveraging on that. There is an opportunity of cost of actually failing to act as well in a timely way, which is likely to lead to smaller market share, weaker growth, as other more progressive businesses attract more customers by demonstrating sustainability of their operations. It's also a value creation opportunity. So becoming more sustainable and helping others to do the same, for example, and this collective action is very important, gives an organization a point of difference, improves your brand reputation, perceived goodwill. Increasingly, consumers want brands that reflect their own values, that are seeking at progressive, environmentally and socially aware products or services. This is a trend that is very much growing, in particular if we look at specific age groups such as Gen Z. And that's an increasingly important point for companies in accordance to very many global surveys, and both from the consumer side, but also from business cooperation side. Talent. Finding talent can be a challenge for SMEs. When we look at any survey of small businesses at any country, talent is quite often mentioned as one of the main challenges. Potential employees are attracted to apply to work and to stay with organizations with values that align with their values, have a cohesive purpose, and are willing to take stand on social and environmental issues. And creating a purpose-driven business make you a business that's more attractive as a career destination for talent. And again, If we look at international surveys, a global survey, for example, last year of 23,000 millennials and Gen Z in 45 countries around the world has shown that climate change was their top concern. So if you're addressing that issue in your business, if you're communicating clearly on how you're addressing that, you are potentially becoming a more attractive career destination. Of course, it's also about investment. When SMEs, when you are looking to expand your businesses, you are typically looking at capital. Investors, funds, capital markets, and financial institutions are encouraging, if not requiring, and it does become gradually a requirement, companies to disclose non-financial risks and demonstrate their commitment to more sustainable business practices. So investors want companies to anticipate and manage climate-related risks, which will reduce operating risks and costs in the future. So, for example, again, if we look at some statistics, we found out that investor confidence survey that was run by our strategic partner, Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand, released in September 2021, revealed that 86% of retail investors viewed voluntary disclosures on ESG information as really important. So that's really food for thought, because this percentage is really high. And finally, resilience and innovation. So the biggest risk is business as usual. SMEs, you need to focus on sustainability and embed it into all decision making. This leads to a better risk management that I mentioned several times, and strategic planning. You'll become more resilient, bouncing back quicker in uncertain, volatile situations. And of course, accountants have a role to play in all of those segments in helping your organizations to embrace those opportunities and to respond to those existing imperatives from different sides. And of course, the lessons learned during COVID-19 can be transferred to the sustainability journey. I think that's undeniable. Many SMEs faced a sharp drop in revenue, closed temporarily, and it's an opportunity. It's a huge challenge. It's a huge pressure, but it's also an opportunity to innovate and build more resilient businesses. And we hope that those new business models will be very much aligned with sustainability. And just in the next slide, we just put together, we analyzed some literature, but also analyzed the findings of our discussions and conversations with the SMEs from around the world, and defined those three main stages where the SMEs can find themselves in sustainability journey. We just put those in the screen. Of course, it's not always one size fits all and like a compulsory set of stages. I know that some organizations, some SMEs go directly to stage 4, but we were just observing that quite often the journey goes from starting with a focusing on maximizing profits, increasing sales and market share, when the owners still lack awareness of sustainability and see it in a way as a burden on growth and maybe skeptical about the importance of the benefit. Then it goes into consideration, awareness, and limited adoption of some aspects of sustainability, often due to external pressures from customers, from the markets. Then it goes to implementation, when the awareness is rising, when there is more information available, when there is more understanding within the company. The companies start deliberately developing sustainable practices, incorporating those into business processes, products, services, aiming at minimizing adverse environmental and societal impacts while maintaining the economic prosperity. And finally, the fourth stage, transformation, is when sustainability is the main focus and business purpose. It's perfectly integrated with all the business goals. It's actually one of the business goals, not looked at in isolation. And it's the purpose of the organization is to create the value for common good, and it's the priority for the company. So it would be really interesting maybe to hear from you, from the participants of the session today, where do you find yourself in those stages? And it's absolutely natural that some companies need to go through evolution. While we do know that some of the startups, for example, are starting from transformation stage, and well, I'm sure we'll hear some interesting stories from Andrew later on. So that's just, if you'd like to comment, to share some views with us. And well, in our guidebook, in our playbook that we will release on the 24th of November, we also suggest a call to action to small businesses. And well, one of the activities of this call, well, several activities of those calls to action are actually why we are here. We're inviting the SMEs to improve your sustainability skills and understanding. That's why we're here today. It's just hopefully to help you improve your understanding, gather resources, start conversation, and connect more widely. Again, that's why we're here, to hear from you, not only to present to you, to initiate a conversation, to connect with your peers, to connect with the organizations that can support you. Consider sustainability in every decision you make. Measure performance outside of the financial statements, and here your accountant can be absolutely instrumental, and I'm sure that Aaron will talk more about that. Engage with professionals, be it professionals from your area. Just talk to your accountant again more actively, because they have the data about your organization. They can help you navigate, and share your insight and experience widely and often, because it can inspire others, it can help others to move forward. And starting from the 24th of November, you will also have the access to our playbook, where you'll find detailed guidance on where to start, what type of tools to use, what type of initiatives are there to support you, what type of resources are there to support you, including some green finance resources, for example. So I included on the screen the link to the ACCA Professional Insights website. I'll also share it separately in the chat box. So from 24th of November, don't hesitate to access our website, and I hope you find more useful information for you in the playbook. Thank you so much. So Aaron, I think that's the moment for us to pause and to see if there are any questions from the participants or any comments. Maybe someone would like to share with us where you are with your sustainability journey.
Yeah, I think before we proceed, we'll dedicate some time. So how we'll do this workshop is after every presentation, we will dedicate some time to do discussion or a Q&A. So we also want to hear from you. Like Alex posed the question, where are you at your sustainability journey? Or you can post questions to us using the chat box, and one of us will address your question. So I saw, so Kate, yeah, hello, Kate.
What I did, I just also dropped the link to the ACCA Professional Insights page. I hope you'll be able to save that link so that you could access the playbook at a later stage on the 24th of November. If there are no questions, I know that sometimes it's really hard to come up with a question or with a comment, so don't hesitate to post your questions at any point of the session today, and we'll just be taking those breaks between each of the segments, and happy to also take your questions later.
All right, I guess if no questions coming, maybe I'll proceed to the next segment. I'll do the presentation, and as always, do put your questions into the chat box. I will also dedicate some time after the presentation to have a discussion with you. Okay, so now let me move. So in this segment, what I'll be talking through, presenting to you, is the role of accountants as sustainability trailblazer. Who are these accountants? They may be accountants employed in your organizations. They could be SMPs who are servicing you for audit purposes, techs, or you may be SMPs who provide sustainability services as their core service. Now, before you start wondering, what can they do for me? What can I get accountants to do? So let's get on with it. Now, in a drive for organizations to decarbonize or to reduce the carbon emission, as we have heard a lot, as if you have attended yesterday's conference, right? If you heard about what's causing climate change is a lot of carbon emissions now, and countries are moving towards cutting their carbon emission. Like, so in Malaysia, our government have also committed to halve our carbon emissions by 2030. So how do we do that? SMEs play a major role. Around the world, there's more than 90% of organizations comprised of SMEs. In Malaysia, that statistics is higher, it's around 97%. So everyone plays a role if we were to cut our carbon emissions. So to decarbonize, we need an integrated approach to sustainability. We can no longer look at sustainability. We can no longer look at sustainability as a separate initiative. This is also brought up by Alex earlier, when you say sustainability is part of your goal, it's not another goal, it's not a standalone goal. And the belief that you can look at sustainability or assess your environmental impact separately from business performance is over. We should approach sustainability as part of the strategy and governance. Now, SMEs of all sizes, no matter whether you're the smaller enterprise or a mid-sized SMEs, you will have your strategy and governance. It's just a matter of how well documented they are. But having this integrated into your governance, and what's next is a rigorous measurement of performance, measurement of your KPIs and KPIs that you have set for things like carbon emission, things like waste management, things like fair pay, reducing poverty. And you want to report this externally in a coherent manner. You want to tell a single story, a streamlined story of what you are doing, the efforts that you are doing. So yeah, you've generated an amount of sales. So from that sales, how much carbon emission was produced, how much waste was produced and sent to the landfill, or if you look at it from a different perspective, how much waste you have reduced, you have salvaged or reused them. So look, just based on what I mentioned in this short time, you get a picture that climate risk is not the responsibility of a few specialists. It is an integral process involving everyone from the production floor to how the product was designed or how you can deliver your service, to your strategy on how you want to approach these targets. So for the past decades, a growing number of organizations have started to incorporate the sustainability risk and opportunities into the business strategy. Now, it's important to look at this from two perspectives or two lenses. One is from a risk perspective, like what will impact our business if we don't do anything, or even if we do something, what impact could it have on us? And you can think about it from a cost perspective, from your financing perspective, from also customers attraction perspective, and talent. On the flip side is opportunities. If you do this, what sort of opportunities you can derive? Now, some organizations have taken a comprehensive assessment of their entire value chain. So these are probably the pioneers, and they have moved along quite far ahead, while others have focused on more specific parts of the business. Yes, you can do it in a staggered, in a phased approach, looking at risk, which part of your business is at most risk, focus on those areas, and you may also look at opportunities that arise from it. Now, you may then ask me, do I need dedicated personnel? Well, yes and no, depends how big, how large your business is. But what's important, all right, is also the culture, sustainability culture in the organization. If everyone is converted, right? If everyone thinks about sustainability in your every action, your financial decision, then you don't really need dedicated person because everyone would be contributing to that target. Now, that brings us to this chart, right? After I blabbered for so long, that not all organizations have really integrated sustainability into their financial decisions. About 1/3 of them, or 37% say they have considered sustainability in their financial decisions to some extent, right? Only 7% say sustainability is central to their financial decision making, but all in all, that represents 66% of those who responded to our survey. And we have over 3,000 respondents globally to this survey that we did. So that tells you 2/3 of respondents are already looking at it to some extent, but there's still more work to do on the road to decarbonization. Now, organizations, including SMEs, you cannot reduce what you did not measure. So that's where accountants come into the picture. When you want to measure, manage, and report something, who is the first person to come to mind? It's an accountant, but most probably their role now is measuring things that are financial, managing things that are financial, your cash flows, your sales costs, right, and reporting them. But these skills that accountants have built up over years of training and practice can also be used for the non-financial side, for the non-financial side of things, or for your business. So at the beginning, right, if you just embark on this journey, you can start with looking at carbon emissions that is generated by your business, and then slowly progress to the entire value chain. How much is generated from your suppliers when they supply the goods to you, and supply materials, how much carbon emission those have generated, and when your customer use your products or services, how much emission is generated. Now, that's quite layman term, but you probably hear scope 3 a lot in the past 2 days. So yeah, you probably say scope 3 is a bit difficult for me to manage at the moment. Right, so then you can start with scope 1 and scope 2. And where can you get help? There's actually a lot of resources that's been shared these 2 days. There's also SME Climate Hub, but I'm not going to spill too much of this because I believe Alex will be showing it to you in her section of Take the Action. But I'm going to quickly tell you that in measuring this, you can use science-based targets, and to measure the emissions, to manage your emissions, and put it into part of your KPI, integrate it into part of your KPI. Have organizations been doing this? We wish more organizations would have done it, right? According to our survey, only 23% of our respondents say they have integrated climate KPIs into their business strategy or their risk framework. So we really hope more organizations after this would align the business strategy with their sustainability targets and build in KPIs. Also, accounting frameworks and standards would help. All right, so given the growing influence that climate-related risks have on business performance, on viability, it is really important for SMEs to also report on the value that's created by your business, values preserved, and how these values erode. So if you think the current reporting standards are too complex, there's actually simpler versions designed for SMEs. So Alex will also present some of those to you. But if you join UNGC's workshop on the module framework, that is also a tool that you can use. So to do that, right, our respondents told us that accountants are important to help them in measuring, managing, and reporting the impacts from their business, the financial and non-financial impacts. So what exactly can accountants help you do? This diagram, right, looks a bit complex. It's complicated. It looks like a dial from the old safe where you can turn 3 times to the right, turn 3 times to the left. Almost like that. If I were to produce this in a physical form, it will be in that manner. It's like a wheel that you can spin. But at the core of it, you will see the 4 R's. The 4 R's of reduce, remove, restore, or reimagine. What to reduce? You want to reduce your carbon emission. You want to reduce your the waste generated, waste going to landfills. You want to not only reduce, but also remove them. Can you remove some carbon emissions or remove plastic use from your goods? Can you remove energy consumption? Maybe not. So then you can reduce energy consumption, and you think about how do we do that now? To do that, right, on this diagram, you will see data. Yep, you will need to collect data on how much energy consumption, how much waste is generated. Then with this data, right, you can set a benchmark. If I'm generating so metric ton in my operation now, I want to reduce by how much. But without that, right, without that data, without measurement, it's really hard for you to take action. What is not measured cannot be managed, right? Besides reducing and removing, you can also restore restore the natural environment. What can you contribute to it? So you've probably heard a lot about tree plantings, saving a mangrove. So you can also partake into such initiatives to restore the environment that has been damaged. And reimagine success, finally, it will entail some redesigning of the process, redesigning of your product, or it may involve investment. So when we talk about reducing your energy consumption, you may need to invest into, say, a new machine or a new machinery. So that comes into investment. So with data that you've collected, right, you've evaluated how much I want to reduce, then you think about how can I change the process. And if I were to change the process, do I need to invest into new technology, new machinery, or new processes, bring in new people? And all this effort, you don't want them to just sit on your desk. You want to communicate it internally and externally. Internally, you want to communicate to your engineering folks, to your accounting folks, your procurement folks, so they know if I were to reduce the impact on the environment, I should be procuring materials that are more sustainable. They are made from plants, maybe, instead of hydrocarbon. So such active decisions will need to be built into your organization. And you see, this is really a cycle, right? This is a cycle. And as a cycle happens, you will go through another cycle of formulating. You formulate what you want to do, right? And you execute it, and you evaluate how well have we done using the data that you've collected, right? How well have we done with this new strategy or new design that we have formulated? And you report it, so then you can go through the process again. Now you imagine it's an iterative is an iterative process involving not just the accountant, but the accountant's role here would be as a broker, an information broker that, if I put it simply, is like a very busy junction with data passing through from different departments, different functions, and the accountant will be there collating, directing, and reporting or presenting that information to you in a meaningful manner. Okay, so with all that's happening, we think that the accountants in the future could be termed as the sustainable business and finance professional, because they will not only look at the financial side of business. Now, where can accountants help you? So just now I told you about the process, but in your business, right, where can accountants help you? Now, at the core of sustainable organization, we think there's a life cycle for value, where value is created. Value needs to be protected. The value that you create in your business, be it being sales or customers or your data, needs to be protected. So that's where you think about putting in place processes and controls. Who is very good with controls and processes and reporting? Who comes to mind? An accountant, right? And this need not be the only one person. So you may have an accountant who looks at your business controls, accountant looking at reporting, what goes through, what happens. But you also want the information that you share out, the story that you tell is backed by evidence. It can be assured. So that's where you engage external assurance, right? But internally, you ensure your governance, or rather your governance ensures the information reported is reliable, and then you also obtain external assurance to provide that extra layer so that customers look at your reports, banks look at your reports, I can believe this information. So where accountants can take the lead in your organization, advising you on the business case. If we were to take this action, what could be the consequences, right? And connecting the dots to the different processes helps you determine the impact of your action or inaction. So inaction could result in higher financing costs now that more banks are signing up to the principles of responsible banking. So that could involve higher costs, and that's one impact that SMEs should look at as part of risk management. Helps you in reporting and assurance, right? After many years of training, accountants are really good at reporting and also providing you assurance on the information. And lastly is embedding sustainability in your organization. Now, embedding sustainability, like I mentioned earlier, will involve your value chain. It will involve looking at the various capitals used by the business, not just financial capital, but also the natural capital used, the intellectual capitals that is used. So as the traffic light at the very busy junction, the accountants would be able to help you embed all these together into a meaningful structure and meaningful form. Now, lastly, where it's really important is ensuring integrity. Like I mentioned earlier, when you report what you've done, you want the readers, the users of your information to be able to trust this information. One way is to use reporting standards. So that ensures information is collated, is measured in a consistent manner. You also get guidance so that this is done in a way that users can understand. Also, there could be a cascading effect. Something similar to this picture that I've used here. You probably feel overwhelmed at the moment with stacks of questionnaires sent to you as as your larger customer wants to manage, right, their carbon emission, they want to collect information. So that is the first phase of you feeling the impact of reporting standards. While the standards are not applicable to SMEs yet, it can cascade down from your customers. But in the attempt, right, to provide information or on your sustainability journey, beware of greenwashing. I'm going to touch upon these 2 points together. Beware of greenwashing, that's releasing misleading statements on your environmental or social impact. Ensure that the information that you put out, whether it's on your company website, right? A lot of SMEs have company website, or on your product labels, are backed by evidence, such that if you say we use 50% less, or we produce 50% less waste, or we use 50% more sustainable materials, ensure this is you have the data to back this up. Right, so thank you very much. That's my presentation, and let's see if we have any questions that have come in, or you have any questions they would like to discuss.
I have a question if no one else has one, Aaron.
All right, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, in terms of for the accountants that want to start this journey and get onto the sustainability space, with their current training, is there anywhere that they can go through to find materials that could easily make that transition for them, whether courses or whatnot?
Yep, that's a good question, Andrew. In fact, I am also learning, and there's a lot of resources in place for us to do that. So if you're a member of professional body like ACCA, we prepare a learning program called the Certificate on Sustainability for Finance. So that gives you sort of a certified learning that will help you understand what is SDGs, what is the impact of SDGs on your business, how can you explain this to your stakeholders, how can you integrate this into your organization. So it helps you develop initial, I would say these are initial skills, right? It won't make you into an expert yet. And also UNGC has produced this really fantastic framework called the Maju framework, where you can also access tools to learn about sustainability, how you can integrate this into your business, how you can measure, how you can report it, all right? And in terms of measuring, I cannot escape from talking about the science-based targets, where they also provide free e-learning sessions. So if you worry about cost, now cost is out of the way, then what else is to worry about? And lastly, I have to say there's a fantastic playbook coming up on 24th of November. Look out for it. Alexandra has introduced a little bit about the playbook and where you can get it. It will be available on 24th November, I promise. Otherwise, you cannot get it. Drop me a message on LinkedIn, right? Drop me a message on LinkedIn and I will share that playbook with you.
Thanks, Alex. I just found the link. I'm going to share it. The Maju.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. And also, just maybe, Aaron, to add, we've also created a so-called Rethinking Sustainable Business Hub as well to support finance professionals in understanding sustainability and how they can support the organizations. And I'll also drop the link to that resource as well that could potentially be helpful to the participants.
how can I forget the hub? It is so useful because now for finance professionals who are really busy, right? You cannot spend your time reading an entire report. There are a lot of short articles that you can really finish in 10-15 minutes, but cumulatively you would accumulate a lot of knowledge in this area. So the hub has CPD programs, it has articles, it has full-fledged reports, like for example the climate action and the accountancy profession, which will tell you what sort of actions you can take as a professional accountant, right? There's also guidance like the one accounting for sustainability, provided by Accounting for Sustainability, is also on the Rethinking Sustainable Business Hub. So that's right, your portal to information and upskilling, so that you can, on top of your day-to-day finance related role, also take a bit more interest into this topic.
Aaron, I think we have the first question/comment. So if you don't mind, I'll read it out. So there could be a person with formal sustainable development academic background and with GRI reporting certificate. Can they also play the similar role as accountant to report, or perhaps accountant as part of the team, but the lead on the particular manager with that formal training? So what do you think, Aaron?
I think yes, you can do that, because what we advocate is also collaboration. Now, while we advocate accountants to take on this role because of the years of training in dealing with data in a structured manner, albeit these are financial data, we believe this skill set can also be applied on non-financial data. So for someone with a formal training in sustainable development, right, you can also do that. Now, perhaps the training that you will need is how do you deal with collation of data, cleaning them up, and then reporting this in a meaningful manner. So if you can work together with an accountant, and I think this is a great team to be working together.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Aaron. The cooperation is absolutely essential, and well, there is so much to learn. For the accountancy profession from those who are environmental sustainability experts, for example, but there is also so much to learn from the accountants. And well, of course, if we speak about the assurance, right, most probably the role of the accountants, while still so many elements could be borrowed from and learned from the experts from other fields, and cooperation is so important.
Yep. So I think if there's no questions coming in, I should hand over to Andrew for your section.
Thanks, Aaron. Just a comment on the previous comment, the previous post as well. There's also an element of cost, I feel, because you're an SME and you don't have a lot of costs to sort of play around with. You can have your accountant, you can have a sustainability professional that you hire and bring in, and you're paying two people to do what could possibly be one person's work. So I've seen a lot of SMEs, what they tend to do is they try to push someone within the firm, someone within the company to take on this role as a sustainability consultant. And a lot of the times it happens to be either the CFO or someone with that financial background, because a lot of if you look at the GRI, for example, there's a lot of things in terms of the governance aspect that ties very closely back to what accountants look in terms of the internal operational business and also the financials of the company and where all these things are flowing to. So there's a big overlap there. And it's, if you want to save some costs, it might make sense to have one designated person to take on that sustainability role.
Yep, thanks. And I just quickly had this question came from Kate. Do we have an example what best practice looks like for reporting in a meaningful manner? Kate, I would suggest looking at one of the integrated reports from company. Most of the time these are produced by PLCs, they may look daunting because that's the complexity of the business. But for SMEs, it can be scaled down to your business, because it's around looking at what are the capitals that you use, what are the risks that you face in your business, what are the outputs from your business. So an integrated report is a great place to start. So, yep. over to you, Andrew. Without taking.
Okay, I need to take control.
Yep.
Remote. The same thing. Yes. Okay, requesting. And
You have control.
cool. So can use. Okay. All right. So again, thank you very much, everyone, for joining the call. And I think, the insights shared by Alex and Aaron is extremely valuable. I've had conversations with Alex myself in a previous session that we've had. And, a lot of these topics are not only things that is affecting people in a certain region or certain country, but often these are things that everyone is discussing about. Countries, all these startups in Europe, the startups that are part of ecosystems, which I'm part of as well. Everyone's talking about this hot topic. And whether or not you're a startup or an SME, which has been traditionally sustainable, or you're actually providing sustainability-related products, all of this matters. And Alex actually brought up a good point on that. The capital advantage of being sustainable or being able to show that sort of processes is important. Because nowadays, a lot of investment banks, a lot of private equity firms, they want to make sure that you have this element because their shareholders and their stakeholders care about these things. So transitioning now into this element here, now I woke up this morning and I realized that I didn't like so much the slides which I had put together in the past couple of days. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stay on this slide a little bit more. I'm going to talk through a little bit of experience from my side and then very briefly spend the last 5 minutes going through the slides. I hope I don't overrun on the clock. So here, the title is really the role of technology in implementing sustainability practices and reporting. However, I am going to focus on one type of technology because I feel that that element is sort of quite relevant to reporting and in general. And that is the aspect of AI in natural language processing, right? So this sort of technology is being used everywhere in almost every industry. And it's really good for capturing unlockable information or information that has been traditionally unstructured. And you want to bring it into a space where you can actually measure. My experience as an AI scientist has told me that a lot of the things that we need to start reporting and start producing outputs is all around us and it's there. It's just in a format that we cannot access. How many of you have actually, sat down and looked at your desk and saw a lot of notes that you've written down and just wish that you can take all these notes, put it and upload it in the computer and have it just catalog everything for you, right? There's so much knowledge that we put out into all these papers, into different conversations, even in blog posts that we put out. And there's no way for us to access this information and convert it into a report. So that's where AI comes in. Now, my experience in the past sort of 3 years is I spent some time with Ernst & Young developing a software that basically looks at different reports, thousands and thousands of documentation for due diligence purposes, and converts all of this into machine extractable data. So that means that if you're given 1,000 documents when you want to acquire a company, and you're meant to review all this and do that due diligence, how quickly can you go through all these documents and find important information? Now, the typical transaction advisory practitioner might spend 2 to 3 weeks just going through all this information, and through the experience, you're going to try and figure out what makes sense and what they can extract. But with the use of AI, we can practically shorten that amount of time to maybe half a day or maybe a couple of hours because we've tested that with our practitioners. This same program is actually being used by, I think, 30 countries now in the EY offices that we have. So we've launched it out to everyone, and there's significant cost savings there. So just to bring that back to the sustainability lens, it's actually the same conversation, right? There's a lot of information out there and you're trying to figure out how can I capture it, how can I pull that in? Do you allocate someone, an accountant or a GRI specialist to look at everything that you have, and they spend weeks or even months trying to collect and collate all this information into something which is representative of maybe it's the value chain of the company, what the carbon footprints are, this and that. And it takes a long time for them to collate that information and actually put it into a very understandable format. Whereas if you can get a machine to do that for you, a machine that's, for example, trained on certain concepts, certain topics, and it's able to make that extraction for you, then you don't have to do it yourself. So one of the things which I'll often talk about whenever I'm launching these sort of products in Ernst & Young is I say that, look, what you're doing right now is you're getting an associate, someone who's junior, to spend 2 or 3 weeks to do all this information extraction and cataloging, right? Now we're building models that does that same thing, but in a shorter amount of time. We're not replacing people so much so, but it's more of we're allowing these manual laborers jobs to be put off to the machine to do. And then your associates can then look at the output of the machines and perform what a manager would do, meaning that reviewing the information. Did the machine bring back the right data? Did the machine identify, what the business is all about and which indicators does the business actually, relate to? If you're looking at the SDG, you're looking at the GRI and whatnot. So with that experience, what I've tried to do now is I've set up a company that looks a little bit at sustainability, automation, and AI. So meaning that if people come to me, they give me their reports, they fill up some questionnaires, and not lengthy questionnaires like the one that you're probably used to and you've seen with the GRI, but something a bit more broad. And from there, the machine then goes into all of this different information and tries to extract the different data points regarding governance, data points regarding social environment, and even on the business. So for example, it's smart enough. You have models nowadays that are smart enough to look at a description of a business and can identify whether or not this business is doing something in the renewables energy space, and therefore, what are the different indicators and metrics that matter to that particular business, right? And don't think of this as something which is so far out and so, wow, how can AI understand these concepts when even we don't? It's the same way that we tend to understand these concepts as well, right? Because we read about it, we read about renewable businesses, read about the impact that they're making, we read about the context in which they're making an impact in their different environments, and therefore the AI does the same thing. It's processing the data and it's figuring out what these guys do within that space. And if it sees enough examples, it's going to be able to generalize and say, hey, so I understand from this company based on this blog post that they're in the renewable business because they're talking about things like solar panels. They're talking about things like energy emissions and reductions, stuff like that. Is looking at these contextual texts, right? So now I'm finally going to move over to the next slide to give you a bit more context in terms of where you can begin on this journey. Because again, it's not easy to go all the way from no technology to using AI to reduce the burden of reporting on sustainability. So I'm going to help you bridge that gap a little bit. But before I go into the slides, any questions so far on what I've just talked about? Or is everyone absolutely lost? Because I always run that risk when I talk about AI. Nobody gets what the heck I'm saying, and it's all just fluff in the clouds. Okay, no questions means everyone understood or everyone is properly confused. Okay, so in essence, the thing about AI and data, right, is that sustainability reporting, as you probably picked up from Aaron's topics, is that it's all about proper management and analysis of internal and external business data. It's finding some way to capture that, structure it, and then report it. It's that 3-step process, very simple. Now, when we talk about technology and going from data all the way to the usage of AI, it always starts off here in terms of business intelligence. That's what you guys do on a regular basis right now. SMEs or larger companies, you guys probably collect some form of business intelligence, the data, and then you're just measuring it in some way. It's kept in Excel sheets. Maybe some of you have started storing them in databases. But again, we don't know how much data there is there. And it's not always stored in a way which can be sort of compared against other data points in the company. Companies tend to keep their data points in silos, especially within different departments. And that's actually quite bad for sustainability reporting because you need all the data in one place to be able to sort of see that whole value chain and do that analysis. Now, the moment companies start going towards a little bit of a better framework in storing and managing the data, that's where you get big data, because big data means that you have huge data frames and databases of all the data that you collect in the company and the business, whether internal or external, and can use that for further analysis. With big data, that's where machine learning and potentially deep learning comes in, because what do you need in order to make this analysis? It's a lot of data points. You have the algorithms, maybe you have a data scientist, or maybe you have an external consultant that helps you do this analysis. But what they often need is the infrastructure to access and manage that data. And finally, once you have all of this stood up, you can start looking at a little bit more, complex systems like automated feedback mechanisms, whereby the data that you collect, you generate analysis on, drives you into making certain improvements and making certain tweaks to the way that you manage the data and also the types of data that you're collecting. So over time, after about 3 to 5 years, you end up with a very, very sort of automated system that's able to indicate and tell you which parts of your business are you actually collecting a right amount of data to measure exactly what you want to measure. Now, just going over to the AI side of things, there's quite a few of different types of families of artificial intelligence. But again, I want to focus on the natural language processing part, because there's a lot of data points out there that sits within the business which you cannot access. Think about, for example, all the audio clips that you have from customer support conversations that you might be storing. Think about all the images that you might be collating every time you send people out to maintain your cell phone towers or other machinery. These images, these voice recordings and all that can actually be used and translated into some sort of format and structure that you could use as part of sustainability reporting, right? You want to know what is the amount of maintenance and how many times have you actually sent out personnel to maintain all this equipment and these factories that you have all around the country, for example, right? And all this would translate back to certain emission type calculations that you do. Can you take all that and can you process them in the right way? NLP, speech to text, computer vision, and all that, these are particular technologies that exist in the market. And some of you may already be using these technologies in order to generate more data and capture it so that you can actually start doing some reporting. Now, there's some big problems with data. And of course, I'm looking at all these challenges that stops you from actually using the data in a way which gives you the output that you want. The first is, of course, data accessibility. There's not always ways for us to actually tap into the data points that we may have lying around, right? Because imagine, you need to set up a whole NLP pipeline, right? Natural language processing pipeline, to maybe look at all the diverse different data sources, the reports, the financials, the blogs, whatever you have posted on social media and the news. All of these data channels could potentially feed back into your cycle. But because you don't have the ways to capture that, the accessibility is not there, therefore you can't access the data. Now then, once you have access to the data, if you do, the next problem is data consistency. Again, you're pulling so many different sources. How do you sort of collate and structure it in a way that you can perform analysis? A normal machine learning, say a regressor, requires you to have variables to sort of compute and predict an output. Now, you need to make sure that each of these variables are calculated in a way which is consistent and there's no additional weight or certain variables are taken into a higher priority over others. You need to do some tweaking to understand the consistency of the data, what you're measuring, and how it affects your output. So apologies, because this is a little bit more towards the data science side of things. And finally, data structure. And this is what Aaron talked about in the past. It's like you're going to hire a lot of accountants that take all of this data and try to structure it in a way that can be meaningful. They're probably going to put in spreadsheets so that they can run the analysis, and then they come up with the output. Now, the question is, what if we can help accountants do this data structuring in a more automated and an easier manner, right? So what might take an accountant or your designated sustainability professional, again, 3 weeks to do and collate, can we do that in a matter of 3 hours? That's always what I'm thinking about. Can I sort of reduce that time to turn around a report or to turn around an output? How do I go next? Okay, is this next? No, right. So here's where NLP comes in again, and I'm going to ignore the text on the slide and just focus on the bubbles. These are some of the technologies that are already out there in the sustainability world, that people are using these technologies in order to help in their reporting and in their structuring of data. So you have social media scraping, right? And this means being able to build engines that scour the web for information that can be used, either in news or social media. And if you're really smart about this, there's some institutions that actually build topic detection engines, right? Meaning that it's not going to pull back everything that it finds on the web, because that's too much of a processing task to do. But it's going to start detecting, based on all these screens that we're pulling back, which of it has a certain threshold of sustainability that's being talked about in a post, for example, and I pull those back. So I'm only going to pull back maybe 1 out of 100 posts, and I'm going to store that 1 out of 100 posts instead of storing 100 posts. The moment this scales out to, a few 100,000 different posts that you're pulling back, that's when you start to feel a little bit more of that pressure to be a bit more selective in what you're screening and pulling back. Because again, this is data. You want to store it and you want to keep it as structured and less noisy as possible. So you want to be able to do a little bit of that smart filter analysis. There's also sentiment analysis, meaning, and this actually works for greenwashing, right? Because what we find nowadays is that companies tend to over-report on all the great things they're doing. But if you look at certain standards like the GRI, they actually ask you to look at not only the positives, but also the negatives. The UNGC does the same thing. Don't only report on positive impact, but also report on what are the negative things that you're producing, the emissions and all that, and how are you going to take steps to reduce this. So sentiment analysis is a good way to go out there and just run that on your reports and see whether or not you're overselling yourself a little bit. You're just greenwashing. You're putting in information which makes the picture look a bit too nice. And there's also risk topic detection, entity extraction. Again, these are models, language models, that look at the text and look at the context and understands to some extent exactly what's being talked about, the important key points for what you want to analyze, and is going to give you an output based on what is detected. Just like how you as a human read a report and can easily pick up the parts of the report which is important for your analysis, machines can do the same thing as well. And many people, and so have I, we built a lot of these topical engines that's able to do this thing. Okay, very quickly. So I just want to run you through an example which we've built, especially with UPledge and the framework that we're following. We actually follow the UNGC's framework in terms of implementing your defining of the principles and targets, the way to measure it, and then finally the way to report on it. And the way that we do this and we help people with their reporting is we'll have 3 different layers of algorithm. The first layer does data extraction, meaning that from the information that's provided to us, we're able to quickly identify certain topics that are material or that are important for the final report. From there, there's a little bit of a mapping and analysis. Again, these are smart machines that are able to take certain information from your data, from your unstructured data, and instantly map it back to different international frameworks like the GRI, the SASB, and the UNGC. The difference in the way that we do things is that we are not rules-based, right? So we don't want a rules-based mapping where people got to click a lot of buttons and a little bit of judgment is required. We use the sentiment and we use the contextual information from these standards and compare it to the contextual information that you provide to do that automatic recommendation. And finally, once we have a good chunk of the data which is relevant for your reports, we can then do a little bit of, quite sexy NLG, which is natural language generation. Can we help companies reduce the amount of time they spend writing reports and generate a report from them based on the data that we have? So these are things that we're currently running, and we're running pilots with a few startups and companies. The reason why we run it with startups, so not so much medium enterprise and more small enterprises, is because we see that that's the biggest need and a gap in the market there. The smallest players, and some of you might be running small outfits, have the least amount of capability to do sustainability reporting because you don't have the time, you don't have the resources, you don't have the money. So what we're always thinking about in AI is how can we take something which is complicated, make it very simple, and again, put it back out to everyone to make sure that you have a little bit of a way to report on these things without expending a large amount of money. You don't need to hire maybe a consultant, you don't need to perhaps hire an additional GRI expert. Let the machine try and give you that initial analysis. And maybe you can even learn from the machines itself. So one thing I've realized through my career is that I learn a lot from the machines. Machines tend to pick up a lot of more things than we do. Because when I read a report, I can only have 3 things in my head and I look out for those 3 things. But the machine's gonna look for the other 20 things, right? It's not limited by processing capacity like we have in our brains. So it's always very interesting to, whenever I look at the output of a model, I realize, okay, the first 3 things make sense. I didn't realize that the next 10 things are also make a lot of sense. But I didn't think about that because I was only focusing on the first three things, right? And if everyone's not too confused, I'm going to end just my segment here. Again, you can reach out to me via LinkedIn. I think that's the best way to reach out to me. I might put my email in the chat later on. So just speak to me about exactly how are you doing your sustainability reporting, and potentially we could talk through some ways in which you can very easily access certain resources that you can use to do your initial mapping and your initial analysis. I'm going to leave it to questions now. Any questions?
Thank you, Andrew. Actually, we will still have like about 10 minutes in the last 10 minutes in the segment for an open Q&A. So you can still ask Andrew some questions there. One question, Andrew, for you now is, we have seen AI has flaws as well. What's your view on this?
So AI is definitely at flaws. But so my question, whenever I'm asked this question, is my answer when I ask this question is, how much flaws does an AI have compared to, say, a person doing the same job? So that's the benchmark, right? Because people often expect AI to be perfect. But let's say you take an associate level personnel and you ask them to do an analysis and see how many things they can pick up from that analysis. And they come out of a week and they say, I've picked up 5 material topics to report on, right? So then what you do is you run the AI through the same exercise and you see whether or not, first of all, did it pick up the same 5 topics? And did it pick up more topics? If it only picked up 3 out of 5, that means that the AI is doing sort of, it's not doing the best job it can, right? It's not up to par with the associate. So you improve and tune the model. But it can pick up more than the 5 topics, then on average, it's already performing better than what the human can do. That's where you can start sort of going ahead and using that technology. It's all about the output and it's all about the cost in the end, right? If you spend a week coming up with 5 material topics, the AI spends a day or even 2 hours coming up with 5 material topics, that's an immediate cost saving right there. It's not perfect because what happens is after the associate looks at these, does this analysis, he passes it on to a manager to review, and the manager will say, actually, there are 7 material topics and not 5, and you miss out 2. But so what we're doing is that we're not letting the AI give us the end result and the end goal. The AI helps us to do some of the heavy work. And later on, we as humans come in to then review the output. And I think that's very important because we need to validate it. And so, never have this conception that AI is perfect, but always have the conception of, is the AI doing a slightly better job than a human? And can we scale it out? I'll give you another good example. Google Translate. A lot of people complain that Google Translate does not do a good job. But does Google translate better than the average person that you find on the street? That's a question. You see? So it's all about scale. It's not about making the perfect job. It's all about scaling it out.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. I think we'll keep any questions coming in for the Q&A towards the end of today's workshop. Now, allow me to introduce the next presenter, which I'm sure you are all waiting to hear from her and curious about how an SME is championing sustainability as the core of their business. So please welcome Juliana. Hi, Juliana.
Hi, Aaron.
Hey,
how are you?
I hope you're keeping well. And thank you very much for joining us to share your stories. We're really interested to know your journey of running BGBG initiative. At the core, it's an SME, right? It's an SME, and you are championing as sustainability in the core of your business. I'm very curious, right, personally, to talk to you again about how BGBG initiative is creating positive impact in society and in the environment, in the things that you do. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions for Juliana, please drop them into the chat box. I will pick it up. But to get the ball rolling, yes, it's unfair because I have prepared some questions, so I'll be asking them first, and let's hear from Juliana, her thoughts. So, easy one, Juliana, a really easy one. Tell us about yourself and BGBG initiative. What do you do? How do you come up with this idea of setting up a social enterprise with sustainability at heart?
Okay, thanks, Aaron. I'll start with a very, very brief introduction about BGBG. So we are a non-profit, we are a for-profit social enterprise. We were incorporated in 2012, so that makes us about 8 years old this year. Our main focus really is on environmental sustainability, and we also focus on community development. Throughout these 9 years, really, we started, the first thing we did was to work on upcycling, specifically fashion items, fashion accessories. So we made bags out of seat belts, out of tires, out of banner materials and those kind of things as well. We make furniture also because we are makers. We like to make things with our hands. So we just find ways and then we make new things out of this. So from there, we then moved on to running a bit more educational workshops, teaching the larger public about how they can also lead a sustainable lifestyle, how they can, create their own upcycled products, and how they can eventually use this as a source of income as well. So from there, we kind of evolved also to run more formal kind of programs through our sister company, Mareka, which was established in 2017. And also we have, in the past couple of years, we've been venturing into running more accelerator style kind of programs, where basically we work with smaller organizations or new startups, or even student youth groups who wants to create a business that has a social and environmental impact as well. So we teach them the ropes, how do they go about it, how do they digitalize their businesses, how do they reach out to the larger masses through storytelling, through communications, and those kind of things. Why we started BGBG is basically we kind of just saw waste literally by the roads. We're driving around KL, the streets of KL. The waste that we saw was actually pellet wood and also tires. Amongst us, the founders, like, we're just in the car asking ourselves, like, why are people throwing it away? Why do they not see value in that one big chunk of tire? You know, they can take it apart and then make it into new things. And that was exactly what we did. The first thing we built was actually a bookcase made out of pellet that we found on the streets. And we actually sold that to a cafe that was up and coming in one of the malls in Malaysia. And from there, that was when we kind of had this idea, like, hey, you can actually make money out of this, right? So why not try to embark on this journey towards social enterprise, social businesses? But at that point, bear in mind, in Malaysia, we do not know anything about social entrepreneurship. We do not know anything about upcycling. We just did something because we were interested, passionate, and just wanted to make a difference in how people run businesses.
I mean, what you're doing is essentially rescuing waste from landfill and making money along the way. But an interesting point, you mentioned that when you started, you knew nothing about running a social enterprise. You knew nothing about doing this kind of business, which is unconventional in Malaysia. Is there anything that is worthy to share with other SMEs in this platform?
Banking on that, I would say, like, don't be scared to start something if you feel like you don't know anything about it. This kind of skills or this kind of technical expertise and all that can be learned along the way, which we did. We were also actually very lucky in a way where each of the founders, or like the founding partners, came in with very different kind of backgrounds. One of them is actually an accountant. There's some of us who's like a physicist, someone who's like a Marcoms kind of background. So it'll be it's actually quite nice to have like this whole different background of skill sets. But what banded us together really was the passion to solve things creatively. I would say that was the thing that really pulled us together to want to create this kind of change. And also with us, with our background, right, some of us are from corporate backgrounds, some of us actually have worked with NGOs and things like that. And we have seen how organizations and businesses work. And all of us do want to have a different way of running businesses, basically, where not only the top management or like not only certain levels of individuals actually earn or like grow, but we want everyone to be able to grow as well from the ground up.
Yeah, I think if anyone has doubt about does diversity really work, and if they want an example, I think they can. You just provided a great example of how diversity in your background among the founders has helped shape this BGBG initiative, the social enterprise. Well, starting from not knowing how to run a business, a social enterprise, to where you are now, can you tell us a little bit about how did your business evolve? What are some of the growth opportunities that you have seen or you are still catching up? Yeah, just tell us how things have changed.
In terms of our service offerings and our products, it has definitely evolved based on the needs of the market and also needs of the communities that we work with. We choose the communities based on their skill sets, their availability, and what they actually want to achieve in their lives as well. So like we try to look for product offerings that can help enhance or like improve their livelihoods also, because one of the things that we do, of course, is to provide an alternative source of income for the communities. Yeah, it's sorry, you were.
Oh, I was asking how has your business evolved since the starting days?
Yeah, so from like the upcycling concept of things, right? Ultimately, I guess the foundation of it really is on the creativity side. How do we solve things creatively? That's where upcycling came into play. We started as a fashion upcycling part, which I mentioned, which is still running right now. Over the years, we have evolved to plastic upcycling, specifically as mostly plastic recycling with the communities. Because that is the current, we see that there is the current issue in terms of environment that we need to solve. This one, of course, comes in with the education and also the creating awareness with the larger public as well. From there, we also saw the need for education, which is where we ventured into Mereka, which is the more formal education side of things. Not only teaching organizations how to improve their businesses and those sort of things, but also reaching out to the youth, because we see, like, especially with the pandemic that hit us last year, right? A lot of the youth and unemployment is a big issue. So we wanted to use Mereka as a vehicle to tackle this, so that we want to prepare the youth for the future of work. So providing them with like digitalization skills, how to become a gig worker, basically from after they graduate, when they have issues looking for jobs, we try to assimilate them into the workspace. So our product offering, or rather what we bring to the market, definitely has evolved. It has to evolve with what the larger needs are, right?
Yep. So, ladies and gentlemen, anyone has questions for Juliana, so that I don't dominate this conversation? Keep them coming in the chats, right? So meanwhile, Juliana, has there been any instances where you are challenged between sticking to the purpose that you have set up BGBG with, or getting sway with profitability?
Thankfully, no. We have actually been very strict with ourselves in terms of like what sort of projects that we get on board, who do we work with, and all that. Of course, it is always an issue to keep the company afloat, right? Like to make sure that whatever that all the projects that we run are profitable, are actually bringing in the kind of impact that we want to create. Having said that, also we have had to sort of say no to a few kinds of partnerships where really they want to just use us as greenwashing. So we have been very selective in who we work with.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned one of the founders is an accountant.
Yes.
So what sort of role do you think an accountant play in a SMEs like BGBG?
For him, really, I think with his like education background and also like his training, right? I think he really brings in he wears the hat of like the person who does all the risk assessment, or whether like he's able to take like to look at the data that we have, the risk, the larger picture of things, and he leads like the calculated next steps that we take for the company. Having his role and also like his background and things really has also kind of trained the rest of us to think in that way as well, which definitely is lacking in like the different kinds of skill sets or educational background that the rest of us bring.
Yeah. Any questions coming in? I'm just checking. Right, none. So Juliana, I know you need to leave us soon. You have another meeting to catch.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Okay. Before we let you go, Juliana, maybe you can share with us for how can a small business who wish to have a positive impact on environment and social issues, where can they start?
I think wherever they start, they just need to be able to start somewhere, even if it's small. Because I really feel like, people think that if they want to make an impact and those sort of things, they feel like they have to really go big. Otherwise, they feel it's kind of, waste of resources, and people would like question them back, is it really impactful and things like that. But I really feel like if you want to make a difference, you just need to, as long as you have the heart for it, if you start anywhere, even if it's like, for example, promoting carpool in your within your team, your colleagues, right? Even that is a big enough step. Can you imagine if you have like a team of 100 people and everyone carpools, that's already like reducing it at least half, right? In terms of your carbon emissions and those sort of things. So my advice really, I think I mentioned this, Alex, also from like the previous conversation, really is to just start wherever you are, as long as you have the idea for it, the intention, that is the most important thing.
I'm really glad to hear that, right? I'm really glad to hear that because it means that you don't have to start an entirely new business to do good.
No, for sure not. I mean, like for BGBG, we were quite lucky. I mean, we somehow fell into it. We wanted to start the new business based on environmental sustainability, right? We have seen other organizations as well that just didn't start off as having impact as a core, but they have slowly shifted their how they operate and also their service offerings and all sorts of things to have community impact, social impact as well. And it's never too late to start, and that's where we always like want to support these kind of organizations as well.
Yep. So you can start somewhere, start small. I think I think hearing from you, I can also imagine you can also experiment with your initiative, and if it works, then you scale up. Yeah, because I think our audience listening in, some of them may have already established business. They have core business that's not entirely built for environmental or social impact. So hope what Juliana has shared also inspire you to do something. You can do it. You can start small. You can start anywhere, and even like looking at Juliana and her other co-founders, you can even start without having expertise in-house.
You can definitely start with collaboration also, Aaron. I would add that. Like I think it was, I'm not sure whether it was you or Andrew who mentioned earlier, like to have efforts like tree planting activities and those kind of things. You don't have to necessarily be the ones to go and plant. That'll be great for the experience, but you can also work with other organizations that are already providing these kind of things. Just work together with them, learn from them, get them to do, if you don't have the resources, then you can get them to actually do it on your behalf.
Yeah, thanks for calling that out, because I know there are organizations like WWF is organizing such initiative, and we can always collaborate. And what about you, Juliana? Are you looking for any collaboration?
Of course, we're always looking for collaboration. Collaboration really is at core of BGBG. For any projects that we run, we work with different partners as well, because we know that we don't have the knowledge or expertise in everything. We may have like knowledge or background in certain things, but other people will be like the field experts in whatever that they're doing. So we always like to get them on board, and it's not really like for our own benefit if we were to keep everything to ourselves, right? Whatever programs that BGBG runs really is for the participants, for the beneficiaries. So we want to be able to enhance or like provide more value to them as they join our programs.
Right. Thank you very much, Juliana. I think the audience are in awe with your experience, with your sharing. So if no questions coming in, I guess I have to let Juliana go. So thank you very much for joining us and spending time sharing your story. So
Yeah.
now, any last words, Juliana?
Well, I guess, I mean, I'll definitely leave my contact info onto the chat box. I'm super happy to be able to chat with anyone who wants to find out more about BGBG or like about, how do you start, if you're looking to start your own impact organizations, how do you want to start that? What are the kind of people that you should be talking to, where to get the fundings and those sort of things. I'm more than happy to share that as well.
That's a wonderful offer. And what a way to end this segment. Okay, so coming up next is what perhaps a lot of you have been waiting for. I've said a lot about what you can do with sustainability. In the chat, I've seen someone ask about what are the tools we can use. So allow me to hand over the session to Alexandra. Alex will bring you through some of the tools and guidance, practical guidance that allow you to take the action. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you so much, Aaron. And well, thank you so much, Andrew and Juliana, for sharing the information. It was really interesting, those very different aspects. And I think the most interesting part for everyone was exactly to listen to this practical experience and what you can do, how you can start your sustainability journey. And well, as Juliana said, every little step counts. So in this following segment, we just prepared the selection of just a very small part of what we included in our playbook in terms of where you can start taking action. And I hope that you'll all be able to access the playbook and get more detailed information about your action as a small and medium enterprise. So as a starting point, again, referring to the amazing material that the UN Global Compact has, I would really warmly recommend you to look at the UN Global Compact principles-based approach. So if you Google it, you can find out more about the 10 principles that are easily found on the United Nations website. Those principles are grouped in 4 categories: work, human rights, fight corruption, and the environment. So that's a good starting point for your reflection. And then, of course, it's very important to define your priorities, in sustainability. And again, I know that priorities, sustainability can sound really complex, but actually try to keep it really simple. And what we learned from many SMEs who we were talking to is that mapping your sustainability priorities can actually also help you understand your own business better, help you to identify your strengths and weaknesses, because you do not often have a chance to pause and look at where you are with different things. And that's what we kept hearing from many SMEs. And your accountant, again, will be able to help you a lot, because they will have a lot of information you need, and they will also know where to find the information, for example, about benchmarking and analyzing the data. They will have the tools, they will have the mindset that's necessary for that. So you'll be dealing with the data on the following areas: your firm's knowledge on sustainability, that's what you really need to understand. What are the industry metrics? Again, your accountant can help. Just look at your business model, analyze your business model. What are your sources of revenue, customers, products, and financing? Again, putting that all on paper or in a document can really help you realize some things that you never thought about looking at your businesses. What's your business position in the supply chain? And then what's your sustainability progress so far? Because what we, again, another revelation that we had when talking to small businesses, so many small businesses are already active in sustainability field, supporting the communities that they're operating at, just being inclusive employers. They just do not communicate it clearly, or they just do not realize that what they're doing is actually having so much importance to wide groups around them. So just start by setting the goals, make a commitment to sustainability goals and targets. And in the playbook, you'll find some references on how you can set those targets and how you can also where you can make a pledge and well, incorporate sustainability as part of value proposition. Integrating those goals is also very important. So you cannot just immediately start with all of them. You need to map the pathways to achieve the sustainability goals. You need to define, to break those down into specific actions that will drive the process. And again, you do not need to change everything starting from tomorrow or even within the several weeks or months. Just build the plan for you, define the specific actions, establish the performance metrics to measure your progress. Again, talk to your accountant about that and take the steps to improve your sustainability, and in particular the environmental actions that are absolutely needed for the climate action, to take the action against the climate change, So when it comes to communicating, again, use your social media, because your positive example can inspire others to take actions, and well, use social meetings, newsletters to reach your own employees, but also your clients, and just inform them about even the start of your journey. You don't only need to inform of the results, inform of on your intention. Just be granular, be specific about your actions, because again, it can help you attract attention, but it can also help you to explain the value that your company is bringing. Next it comes to developing a sustainability strategy that you will be able to proceed to after all those steps. So it's absolutely important that you have your employees, management, and board committed to sustainability issues. I know that some of the teams within the SMEs are really tiny, so make sure that even if you have a team of 3, all 3 of you are really they're committed to supporting you in this journey. Well, of course, develop a document, because it sometimes can take some time, and well, you need to have the reference point. So those are just some of the steps, simple steps that you can take, defining your priorities. Again, you can find out more, and you can also find more information about the tools that you can be using in the playbook that's going live soon. Looking at the climate and environment, well, we'll just look at some specific actions, some fields. It's absolutely important to understand the difference between mitigation and adaptation, and again, what actions you can take in both areas. Again, you'll be able, I'm just saying that we have only 15 minutes left, so I won't be able to go in detail at all of them. But again, understanding the difference between the two will help you understand what actions you can take, understanding your footprint. And we've already shared some links in the chat box on the carbon footprint calculator. Just set your targets to reduce emissions. And again, we have plenty of material in the playbook that will help you to set the targets, be accountable, sign up for a credible standard. And well, again, as it was mentioned by different speakers before me, reuse, repurpose as much as you can, recycle as much as you can. And well, in terms of being accountable and signing up for a credible standard, more than 450 voluntary sustainability standards operate globally, and they are informing consumers about sustainability offers in production and manufacturing. And for example, at the International Trade Center, one of the UN agencies, they developed a standards map where you can find more information about those standards and about the right standards for you. So we also try to simplify the information about those standards in the playbook, and I hope you will be able to take a look at that when it goes live and to find out more for yourself. themselves. So in terms of making commitment towards net zero, again, we included some examples of those initiatives at the screen. There is an SME Climate Hub. I shared the link to that in the chat box. There is a science-based targets. There are also other, other ways of taking commitment. So just use one of them, use the one that's most appropriate for your business. Again, measuring footprint, carbon footprint. On the screen, I've included some of the options on where you can find out more information on how you can do that. There is a carbon footprint calculator, climate gap, Kogo, Bonneville Foundation calculator. I shared some of the links with you in the chat, but also when you have the sustainability playbook available, you can take a look and find the tool that possibly will be the most useful for your business. A very important part is looking at your supply chains. It's investigate your supply chains, not only for emissions and environmental impact, but also social impact. Use a risk-based approach, considering the product, services, and location. Request information about fair labor practices, human rights, and also anti-corruption policies. It's very important to understand also the three categories of carbon emissions that are defined by the greenhouse gas protocol. And well, on the screen, you can see some of the actions that you can take looking at your supply chain. So understand different parts of it. If you're not massively producing anything, there are goods that you're purchasing, there are products that you're purchasing. Look at even your own employees' ways of commuting to work. Look at the possible areas of where you can impact easily and rapidly, and take those easy steps first. And if you have an opportunity, look into more complex areas. Well, we also compiled some recommendations in terms of reducing your carbon emissions in your working place. You might want to consider those, as they can be quite easy to implement in a short-term perspective. So choose your products with longevity, investigate energy efficiency, appliances. Those are very straightforward, easy, and also can result into cost saving. Switch to renewable energy, of course, where it's possible. Reduce your business travel. Again, I think we're all now in the situation when we're having almost no business travel, but still for the future, when the economies reopen. Assist your employees to manage their commute-based emissions. So maybe you can support them with remote working by supporting them with some online solutions that they can use. Just rethink the way they work, because it can also finally very much influence the quality of their work, and that will also improve their loyalty to your organization. Ensure digital infrastructure. Reduce paper use, check on the power and energy practices, and well, of course, reduce the waste. And you've even heard of some really creative ways how you can be using your waste. So maybe look at your waste management from a different perspective. It can also bring you some opportunities. But well, it's not only about the environment, of course, and it's also about diversity and inclusion. So if we remember the UN SDGs, it's a global lens for people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. So examine your own organization, create an inclusive workplace with equal opportunities. Again, that's very important for the loyalty of your employees. Accelerate careers for underrepresented groups. Be the one who is leading the change within that area, not waiting for the change to happen within those around you. And well, of course, governance and partnerships. Look at governance and partnerships. Your accountants can be absolutely instrumental in supporting you with that. There's a myriad of actions that you can take. Connect with your local organizations acting in sustainability. Join your industry bodies, speak for sustainability initiatives. Reach out to those to others in your sector to unite your voices for change. It's identify, look at your risks. We've spoken a lot about risks, identify where possible, measure sustainability risks relevant to your business, assess the environmental and social impacts where as appropriate, and look at inherent risks such as where there's an energy intensive industry or reliant on scarce resources or face risks in your supply chains. Finance impact, determine the impact on each of the categories of those risks to your business. All risks have material consequences, and if they don't have those material consequences now, they might have those in the future. Again, talk to your accountants, try to assess those consequences in advance in order to plan for them. And of course, materiality, well, a useful tool is a SASB materiality map. You can Google that. I can share the link to that. It looks at risks most likely to occur in 7 industries, 7 industries in 11 categories. So use those to identify the issues that will likely affect the financial condition or operating performance of your company in that industry. And again, your accountants will be absolutely instrumental in helping you with that. So there is a lot of information, there is a lot of opportunity for action for you as an SME. Those actions don't need to be complex. And what we did as ACCA was one of our global partners was Sage, a technology provider. We also issued a call to action to the governments and to the large companies explaining that SMEs cannot deal with all the complexities and with all the pressures that they're being put now, and that all the requirements that are going to be introduced by the governments in the future or cascaded down the supply chain by the large organizations, they need to be very clear cut. They need to be simple, because we do understand that small businesses are very scarce in time, and all the requirements need to be transparent, understandable, and also actionable for small businesses who we perfectly understand don't have the corporate sustainability teams or don't have sustainability teams at all. So you need support in that. And we are calling to this support for this support from the governments, having our discussions with them when we have the opportunity. And again, you can find out more detail about the action that you can take, the tools that you can use, the initiatives that you might want to join, the global pledges that you might want to sign in the SME Sustainability Playbook that we developed with our strategic partner, Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand. It will be available on the ACCA Professional Insights page starting from the 24th of November. So I think that's enough of presenting for today. Thank you so much. And I guess that's the time for discussion and for the remaining questions for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra, for the wonderful presentation. There's a lot to take away and a lot to unpack for our audience. So we have still about 6 minutes left for the workshop. And if anyone has questions for us, do drop a question into the chat box.
Otherwise, I know that we only have 5 minutes left. I'll also share my LinkedIn profile with you in case if you have ideas about some questions or suggestions. More than happy to connect and to have a chat as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. I'll do the same in a while. So do connect with us. I understand we may not be able to solve everything in a 2-hour session. It's impossible, but do keep the conversation going. I'll be happy to respond to your questions or direct you to resources for things that you're looking at. I guess that really sums up the work of an accountant, very much like the traffic light that I told you about at the busy junction.
Maybe just one thing to add is that a lot of the accountants that I know today, especially in my role, are starting to move a lot more towards the data and data science related fields. And that's really, really helpful when you're dealing with complex topics such as sustainability, because I probably have less experience than Aaron and Alex in terms of sustainability, But through the usage of very sort of efficient models, I'm able to sort of bridge that gap in maybe a slightly shorter amount of time, right? Because you have algorithms that could potentially look at the SASB and can look at the GRI and the SDG and start doing clusterings and mappings on how the similarities of these indexes actually correlate. And then after, when you come up with your initial report, you could sort of decide based on the analysis which ones are the most material to your business from the get-go. And to Aaron's point earlier in the start of conversation, I came out from an accounting background, and I picked up some data science. So look within your companies and look for very, very young and ambitious professionals with that background that want to learn some Python, some programming. And I can tell you, it would transform the way that you handle data and the way you look at all these different issues, right? There's so much that you can unlock based on that knowledge that accountants have, the sustainability knowledge, and what you can then leverage online. Because a lot of these things with AI and data science is all open source. You can probably even find a model out there that pretty much does a little bit of summarization or a little bit of very simple mapping of the SDGs already. Someone may have put it out there as an open source. All you need to do is have the data science knowledge to be able to call that library and leverage it. And that might take a little bit of homework on your part, but it is perfectly doable.
I think this is really the decade of action for us, and the trends are in the right direction of travel. So Andrew, you mentioned something really important, that is engaging the younger generation, and there's a growing workforce of our next generation who cares about sustainability. I think now I'm not trying to bad-mouthing my own generation or generation before me, but it's just that you will realize the younger generation, they really care a lot more about the planet, care a lot more about sustainability of organizations, whether the things that we do in business, is it harming society or is it harming environment? And they can turn that energy, that curiosity into actions. Now, we're not talking about boycotting or walking away from certain business, but turning that energy into helping businesses change the processes. It takes a lot of research and trial and error, so that energy can be put to use along with technology, right? A decade ago, internet wasn't that fast, especially in this part of the world. We don't have processors at affordable prices that would allow us to do data science. But all this is accessible today. So you have the workforce, you have the interest, and that's the technology. So this is really the decade for us to take action.
And I absolutely agree also from my side. We keep hearing how accountants and accountancy practitioners are called as change managers to small businesses. So I really hope that with this mindset, those change managers will be able to help you to also look at the sustainability, sustainable transition. And I would say that from the global discussions that I have, there are different generations that are active in that field. And I'm a strong believer that there is a lot of cooperation also with older generations, and many accountants are being on board and advocating sustainability agenda. So talk to your accountants, ask them to help you, and I'm sure they will at least help you to start your journey.
Okay, I think we're on the dot. If there's no further questions, I guess we'll hand the session back to UNGC, to Kylie.
Hi. So thank you so much, Aaron, Alex, and Andrew and Juliana for the super insightful session today. I hope that everyone has gained more knowledge through this workshop, as well as understand how to incorporate sustainability practices within your businesses. So today's session is coming to an end, and on behalf of UN Global Compact Network Malaysia and Brunei, and also our knowledge partner ACCA Malaysia, I'd like to thank everyone again for making time in your busy schedules to join us. But before I end this, I would also like to invite everyone to come join us in our other available workshops throughout this week. and also our upcoming event, the Go ESG ASEAN 2021 Virtual Summit, which is happening on 24th and 25th November. Once you sign up for the event, you will get access to the month-long virtual exhibition. I'll be sharing the link to the event in the chat box below, and I hope to see you guys there. With that, I wish all of you to stay safe and have a pleasant day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.